So now it's time to jiggle the rocks. I will put this in my tripod. So here's our light cover. And just very carefully lift it and jiggle it. Maybe both sides. Just a little bit. This is a close-up of the finish. Close-up of the inside. I tried to keep most of the light uncovered, not covered up with the finish. This is a close-up of that patch I did on that stone. There's a close-up of the panel, which you don't need to touch. Now tomorrow I'll come back in the shop and show you how to beat it with the plastic brush, both sides, and hose it, and your patch is complete. The other thing important is that each day when you work with the gray material and the next day with the color, that you have your wet dry shop vac handy, and in the base of the pool there in Grand Turk that you rinse it and vacuum up all the loose stuff, because you don't want that setting and staying and causing more problems when you rinse it and change your water and add water. Also here in my shop, this is a typical compressor. Works here. And the hose, orange hose, quite a long hose, and I use my standard hopper. I guess you can see my hopper there with the trigger. And this I use to spray the finish on. So only if you had to do extensive repairs or someday refinish the fountain, you'd buy sacks of the pool finish, 5-pound boxes, several of the color from Lamco, mix it all up, spray the finish on, and use your hopper and compressor. Those things I used something that was on the island. I don't remember if I sent my hopper down there. I might have, and then shipped it back. But I know I used the local compressor. So that should help you keep the fountain up and running. If I think of anything else, I'll amend these videos. Thanks a lot. This video will see the ratio of the sand, the perlite, and the mortar mix that go into my hand layup material. Every time I work with the concrete material, I wear latex gloves because the mortar mix is very caustic, very alkaline, and it will burn your skin. And also when I'm mixing materials, I always wear a particle mask, So sand for each batch is 1.5. It's 1.5. And I'm mixing in 2 buckets because that's easier to mix with the blender, with the mixer. Two. And then 1/2. And then the perlite. That's 2, 1 for each bucket. So that's 3 sand, 2 perlite, and 2 mortar mix, and it's high strength mortar. At this stage, I'd usually add a pinch of the fiber, the long fiber. It's also called commercial fiber for concrete, as opposed to the fine fiber that is for stucco material. But I'm not adding it at this point because I want to mix it up like I did for Jamie and Grand Turk. So now I'm going to mix the dry ingredients together. Now normally I would mix them wet with the bonding agent and water and mix them individually and then combine them and get them to the right consistency, but I'm going to divide them into the baggie like I did for Jamie and Grand Turk. So that's approximately what was in each bag that I sent to Jamie and Grand Turk. Of course, I wanted to point out that when I was mixing the dry ingredients, I was mixing them into 2 buckets. That's the sand bucket, and there's the bucket with the dry material mixed together. So for Grand Turk, for Jamie, I'd like to show you how I mix up from scratch the pool finish. I sent you the packets all pre-mixed, but just in case you use that up, or if you save this video, on somebody's computer on a USB drive or something, you'll have it for the future. So you take any pool coat finish that's pre-mixed, all over Florida. Different companies make it. This is Hydrazo by Aquavations. I've used over the 36 years of my business Pool Tight, Pool Coat, Pool Crete, Marsite. They're all different companies. And it's basically your Trinity White Portland with a good marble aggregate in it for strength in a swimming pool. It's pre-mixed. So to a coffee can size, normally I would wear a mask, but this is just for 1 container. So this is your typical pound plastic coffee can. 1, in a dry bucket. So per can, of course you can mix as many cans as you need to. And then this is the concrete color. As you can read, this is by Lambert Corporation, Lamco, lambertusa.com in Orlando, Florida. And I use the 2 color combinations, light buff and dark buff. Light buff and dark buff. I got my bucket down here that I'll be putting them in. And I put 2 level tablespoons of each color per pound coffee can. So that's 1 into the bucket, 2, and then we'll do the same with the dark buff. And this is the color combination for the buff coquina fountain that I've been using for 36 years. There's one level tablespoonful of dark buff and the second. I'll seal those up later. And then you mix it by hand, dry, being careful not to breathe the dust. You mix it very well dry, and that's the pool finish that's pre-mixed with the color that I sent you in the baggies to Grand Turk. Many years ago, there was a wall of real coquina in Daytona Beach at Hing's Restaurant, where I did one of my very first buff-colored fountains, and he had a wall, real coquina wall, and there were many different colors of rock. And I made up half a dozen different samples, and John Hing, the owner, and myself and others agreed that this one color was bright and represented coquina the best of all the different shades of coquina, and that was with the 2 tablespoons dark and 2 tablespoons light buff, and it holds up really well.